Tom?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Good evening, dissidents, one and all, and welcome to our Sunday night, regular 7 p.m. time slot edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss. I am without Russell Dobular tonight, but before I introduce our guest for the evening, I do want to say he will be back, provided he is not trampled by a camel. On Thursday, he will be broadcasting from India on Thursday. That is the plan for now. I noticed Tom in the chat said I had the wrong continent. No, I do not, Tom. I saw pictures and video of Russell riding a camel. I know better than to make a joke like that unless I know I have the continent right. You can get canceled for shit like that if you don't have the continent right before making a joke like that. So trust me, I come prepared. But you know who else comes prepared? Our guests for the evening. They are the hosts of the Punch Up podcast, which broadcasts regularly on YouTube. They are pals of the show. They were here for our election night broadcast. We had a great time with them. I was eager to welcome them back. Let's welcome Lila Charles Lee and Pat Cody back again.
Hello.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
This is my show prep, so yes, we do prep.
I know. I don't usually indulge on the air, but I didn't want, it's rude to not participate when, you're in the company. So I'm doing my boring beer tonight. I'm doing a Stella tonight, although I do have some great craft beers, Pat, that I think you'd be very impressed by. I don't know if you ever heard of a beer called Intangible Tides. It's by the Burlington Brewing Company. Phenomenal. That's a triple IPA though, so that's a little intense for being on the air with. But so I chose to go with the easy stuff for the evening. But thank you guys so much for joining us. It's great to talk to you again. You guys joined us for election night. How's things over at Punch Up? Do you want to just give a little brief introduction for those of you, in our audience who have not met you yet?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. Sorry that Russell isn't also here. I hope he fares well in his battle with the camel, but we're happy to be here. Thank you. We host a lefty show called Punch Up Pod, where we talk about the happenings of the week, the state of our country and the world, and to combat our desperate sadness, we tend to drink quite a bit. But also just to remind ourselves and our viewers, like, it's fun to come together in solidarity, even in these sort of sad times, and find some moments of joy. So that's our mission statement.
No, I like how you incorporate the booze into the concept of the show.
Yeah, and I'm just going to second Lila. She does all the good speaking, and I do the poor speaking. So she can lead on this one.
All right, excellent. Well, James Vanderzanden, good to see you again, sir. Thank you for the $2. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. Our tip jar is out, folks. The more super chats, the more patron signups we get, the more often we can do this program. So I want to thank you all for that very much. Tusker, thank you for the $5. And for the reminder, yes, hit that like button and have a great show, guys. Guys, how good was Tusker last week? Tusker co-hosted with us on Thursday. She did a great job. The reviews for Tusker were overwhelmingly positive, which is tough to pull off in this kind of space. As you guys both know, Pat and Layla, this is a brutal ecosystem.
Ruthless.
All right. Well, speaking of ruthless, we weren't going to talk about this tonight. We do have a great show planned, but it is a tight show because all I was really planning on covering in great detail tonight was, of course, the Rage Against the War Machine rally. That is the talk of the online left today, and so we're absolutely going to get to that. But we have to kind of do the show in reverse order because this was a total coincidence the way this happened. So I reached out to Lila and Pat about a week ago, I think. I had you guys booked for this co-hosting slot for quite some time. But then I noticed this morning I woke up and the Vanguard boys had posted on their Twitter feed sort of an open call. They were creating a panel to debate and discuss Marianne Williamson's candidacy because Marianne announced that she has a special important announcement that she's going to make next month, which everybody rightfully is thinking will be her campaign launch. And so the Vanguard boys put out a tweet that I saw this morning. I guess they put it out last night, but they said we're hosting a panel tomorrow afternoon about Marianne Williamson 2024, and we want to include a variety of voices with diverse opinions regarding her candidacy. Any suggestions of who to invite on? Now, I noticed some of you guys, some of you viewers who also watch their show have been putting in their chats that they should debate us, right? Or either we should go on their show or they should come on ours and we can hash out our differences. And one of the topics that you guys bring up when you do that is Marianne. So I responded. I submitted myself. I said, I'll come on and I promise I'll be nice. And that response got, about 17 likes it's up to now. So it got a decent response. I mean, these guys don't have a huge following on there. So, it was a fairly well-received reply. I did not hear from them at all. I didn't expect to hear from them. But this afternoon, I see on Lila's feed that she was invited onto the panel.
She cheated on me too.
I think you guys are possibly missing a few features that I have that they were looking for. I don't think it was a slight against either one of you in particular. I think they were trying to balance the panel with more female energy.
Well, I didn't expect to be invited on, but I just think it was a crazy coincidence that you were invited on the same day you happened to be coming on our show. And it's not like we put you on right after. You had agreed to come on our show last week.
Yes.
So I don't want to necessarily spend too long on this topic since we've covered this a lot, but since that panel discussion did happen and I saw both your opening and closing statements because I had to prep for this show, so I didn't have time to watch the whole thing.
I'm not offended.
What are your opinions on Marianne 2024 and how was it received amongst the Algonquin Roundtable over there?
Okay, first of all, we really like the Vanguard guys. They've had us on many times. We really love you guys also. So I'm not sure about what the whole backstory is. Okay.
Whatever. We made fun of them a little bit because they're easy to make fun of and they probably don't like us too much. So I didn't expect an invitation. But that's it. I don't hate them. It's not like nothing like that.
Anyway. So but the discussion was obviously about Marianne Williamson. I think she seems like a fine person. I don't agree with all of her positions, especially on foreign policy. I don't see her having the kind of following that somebody like Bernie had. I don't think that she can galvanize the left in the same way. I don't think she can galvanize the working class. I don't think she has the ability to speak directly and fiercely against the powerful people in the halls of the White House and Congress, in the same way that I would hope somebody like I think the three of us are all huge fans of somebody like Shama Swan. And I wish that she could run for president. I think she's amazing. But to me, I'm never, I think, going to find one candidate who holds all of the positions that I hold. I admire her for putting her hat in the ring because no progressive out there other than Marianne Williamson is willing to challenge the leader of the Democratic Party, which I find appalling. I think they've done enormous damage to the progressive wing of Democrats. I think most people who feel that they are on the left feel wildly disappointed by what happened with Bernie. And my ending point on this panel was The real question for me to Marianne Williamson is, are you willing to take on the burden of being accused of being the person who caused a second Trump presidency? Because unless she's willing to take that on, and Bernie wasn't, with all of the support, with winning the first three, the caucus and the first three primaries and caucus, with millions of supporters and volunteers and, donations. And I think he could have won. I think he could have done a dirty break. I think he could have done all of those things, but his fear was, I will be blamed for a second Trump presidency. That to me is what happened. And I think if he couldn't do it, I don't see her having that kind of strength to take that on. I think that's an enormous burden for somebody who has a lot of, I think, feelings of loyalty towards the Democratic Party, which I think she does.
I think you're absolutely right. And I saw you get a little bit of pushback on that point towards the end there. But anyway, Pat, what's your take on that? As someone who was also disinvited, as a fellow victim of gender discrimination.
Oh my God.
I mean, I was going to make it. I won't make any jokes here. Let's just move on. So honestly, my thoughts on Marianne, look, I don't mind her being in the race. I think it's great that she's in the race. I think for people to think that she can win this is ridiculous. Don't give her $1. I mean, keep her in the race. If you have a shit ton of money, give her $1. But if you're a poor person who gave Bernie money, don't give it to Marianne. It's just, to me, that's a waste of money. And when I think of Marianne, I think she's an honest person. I'll give her credit for that. I think she believes what she says. I think she's incredibly naive. I also think she's kind of like one of those people who, we know in our real life who's a centrist, but agrees with us on social issues. And you could talk to them for 5 minutes. And they're like, you know what? Yeah, that makes sense. And then they see something on the news and they're like, holy shit, Trump's going to win if we don't fucking get behind the Joe Biden's whatever, So she's not going to really stress Biden in the debates. Even I think she'll be soft in the debates. So unless she shows some sort of gumption, well, I will see. I don't even know that Biden's going to be in it.
I don't think there's going to be debates. I think he's going to be in it, and I think he's going to blow her out. And I think, it's just a completely unserious proposition. If she were willing to commit up front to a dirty break, that would be a different story, because then you feel like you're at least building towards something that's going to survive her primary defeat. And Lila, that's kind of what you were saying at the end of that panel there, because what the Vanguard guys are under the impression of, and I think maybe a few other people on that panel, like I said, I did not watch the whole thing. I only watched your part since I knew you were coming on. They're under the impression that she already has committed to the dirty break, which she absolutely has not. She has said she will consider a dirty break if she's treated unfairly. And my point is that they're not going to treat you unfairly, because they're not going to have to treat you unfairly. They're going to blow you out 95-5. You can't claim the thing is rigged against you if you register single-digit support. You can't claim you're entitled to a debate. You can't claim that they have to take you more seriously than you deserve to be taken if you poll in single digits. And I think any doubts about Biden's re-election campaign even getting off the ground were probably quelled from his performance at the State of the Union, which, whatever you think about the substance of that speech, he proved he can get up there, read the prompter. He, went back and forth with the GOP hecklers a few times.
Honestly,
I think he did what he had to do. He read the speech. When they heckled him, he had a little fun with them. That's all he's got to do. He does that a couple times a week. It's good enough for them. Is it good enough to win? No, I don't think so. I think whoever wins the GOP primary is going to win. Right. But he's good enough for them. Certainly good enough to the point where, they're not going to want to take any chances subbing him out for anybody. Right. Because they don't care if they lose, ultimately.
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, listen, Biden shouldn't have been good enough when we all saw him stagger across the stage in 2019. And it was, it wasn't even a secret. I mean, people talked about it openly. Cory Booker and Julian Castro talked about how he couldn't remember the last thing that came out of his mouth. Right. And now we're all pretending that he's, flying with, whatever flying colors. Sorry, I shouldn't have had my pregame. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I don't think she's going to get these same kinds of numbers even close to what Bernie got. And I don't think that she has that flame in her that, she is part of a high level of society. And the fact that she's even doing this, I'm sure, is bringing a lot of rebuke from people that she's probably used to socializing with. But what I certainly don't, so I really, I have a lot of admiration for her to even do this, because nobody else is. I mean, nobody. I cannot believe that nobody from the squad, nobody from outside, like nobody is putting their hat in the ring. So I am all for democracy. And as Pat said, yes, she should get herself out there. More democracy is better. Possibly this will open the door to make it permissible for somebody else to throw his or her hat in the ring. But in the end, I do not think that she has the strength to welcome their hatred in the way that it would happen if, for whatever reason, even if she carved away a couple of percentage points, she would be blamed for a second Trump presidency or Ron DeSantis presidency or whatever. I just don't think that she would take that on.
I don't think so either. What do you guys think? Because, I'm spreading the gospel that the voters are the big problem. And, and by the voters, I don't mean all voters, right?
Yeah.
I'm not blaming all the voters. I'm not saying half the country or this or that.
Yeah.
But Democratic Party primary voters, there are about 30 million of them. And, about 60% of them voted for Joe Biden last time. 70% of them trust the mainstream media. This, to me, is the structural problem with any quote unquote progressive challenger. On that panel, they were discussing Marianne's positions on the issues as if that even matters. All that matters to these people is what Pat said earlier, which is they're going to become convinced that whoever the progressive is can't win. And so they're going to vote for whoever the DNC wants them to. These people remain inspired by and loyal to and supportive of, as we'll talk about in a moment, Pete Buttigieg, even after the East Palestine thing. Like, at what point do you wash your hands of this and say, okay, there is just no more blood to be drawn from the stone that is the Democratic primary voter base? Like, how big a problem? Because I don't hear anybody else talk about that, because they don't want to sound elitist. They don't want to sound snobby by blaming voters. And I'm saying, I'm not blaming all voters. I'm blaming the small subset of voters who have proven over and over again that they are shallow, they are incurious, they are self-serving. The issues don't matter to them. They admit up front that the issues don't matter to them. They're just, whoever can beat Trump, whoever can beat DeSantis, right? And so how big a problem is that? I want to get each of you guys on that before we start our second topic here.
You go first, Pat. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole problem. I mean, but behind that problem is the media. It's the fact that these are ignorant people at the end of the day, is what it comes down to. They're incredibly ignorant. And they think if they just watch MSNBC once in a while, they're already ahead of most people as far as being politically astute and aware of what's going on in the world. So, if there is no like trusted, true source of any information, these people are always going to be victim to propaganda from that main source like CNN or MSNBC. So on a dime, you can turn somebody like Bernie, who's doing pretty well, into the person that could ruin this whole fucking country for everybody, destroy, democracy if he lets Trump win. And to think that someone like Marianne, who doesn't have a tenth of the gravitas that Bernie does, can come in and win in that environment where in a week they made Bernie a pariah to a lot of Democrats.
Exactly.
It's just crazy. So it's not going to happen. But I do still see value if she were to get on stage somehow, if there was a debate or if she publicly woke a few more people up by challenging some of his opinions, even though she's not going to win, because she's not going to win. And anybody saying she's got a shot in hell is just fucking crazy to me.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I don't know how to get through to liberal voters, because I think it's a multi-pronged issue. One is that I think they have been brought up and adhere very strongly to a notion that just casting a vote for Democrats provides them with some sort of sense of moral rectitude. Like, they voted for the good team. And if you point out to them how many of the policies they pretended to despise when Trump was enacting them have been continued or furthered by Biden, they don't want to hear it, or they have excuses. When I ask my friends, can you tell me any difference between Biden and George W. Bush? You cannot name. I don't think you can name something except for that Biden's been credibly accused of rape and sexual harassment. I mean, I really don't know. He has not illegally invaded two countries, although he's getting us closer to World War III than I've ever felt that I have been in my whole life. So I guess and like this whole, disgusting, corrupt catastrophe that I know we're going to get to with Pete Buttigieg. And, Biden's DOJ coming out right now. They're hearing a case, I think, at the Supreme Court where they are coming out on the side of Norfolk Southern. Even
against
after
a
all of
cancer-stricken employee.
Yeah. So, I guess what I try to do when I speak to the few normie Dems who still consider me friends, because I had a hard break. I had a dirty break in 2020 involuntarily, but I was broken up with by many. They really push back. They do not want to hear. And so I think that's what the problem is. If you don't have a real ideology, if your whole ideology is not Trump, then there's no anchor to hold anything onto. Then you can say that you miss George W. Bush, which I've heard tons of liberals say. Oh, I long for the days of George W. Bush, who I think was a way worse president than Trump. He did way more damage to the world. They cannot get their minds around it. They just don't like those mean tweets. They long for the old Republicans.
Well, because it's all about virtue signaling. It's all about, I forget exactly how you put it. You use the word moral and then something. I forget
rectitude.
what it was. Exactly. Yeah. It's all about moral rectitude. They have no actual politics. Yeah. They have no actual stakes in the outcome.
Right.
Voting Democrat is a guilt suppression or guilt management exercise for them.
Yeah.
When we talk about the Pete Buttigieg supporters, they're people without a real problem in the world, certainly not any problems that the political system can solve. And so they vote Democrat to feel a little bit less guilty about having benefited from an unjust system.
Yep.
But a challenge to that system is out of bounds for them. That's a step too far, because in their minds, they, have their own sort of moral reckoning. They sort of balance their moral spreadsheet by pulling the lever for the D team. And that's all it is to them. And when you said they don't want to hear criticism, it's not that they even bother to defend against that criticism. They just don't want to hear it. I call it the liberal cat stare. When you start talking about that, they stare at you like a cat stares at you when they don't quite know what you're talking about. They just give you this blank stare and just wait for you to get done talking. And then, they pick up the fork and go back to the salad or whatever. Like, they just don't engage.
In fairness, I wish I could have that blank stare, because we are so fucking helpless sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it, though. It's like they're so conditioned to, you got two choices. That's it. You got two choices. Yep. And when the guy on the right is a terrible person, fundamentally, and the worse off the right is, the less you have to pay attention in their minds to what any politics. Take California, for example, where Lila and I both live. It's like, it's such a democratic state that, a lot of these people think they don't have to follow anything because, we're safe from abortion getting, California will always have abortion, things like that. They just see the bad on the right and go, fuck, that's terrible. I'm not that good for me.
Exactly.
And it's so insidious because they've really decided that Democrats do want good things, but we just have to wait because that's pragmatism. And if you explain that, that's the whole game, that's what they have convinced you of, that we have to defend, Roe versus Wade and civil rights and gay rights. But we have to put it on back burner right now. Don't talk about defunding the police, even as they are just, without any consequences, killing Black people on the street, just, who are running away from them. That might hurt Biden. Let's not talk about that. Right. So
right.
On some level, it's more evil because they are convinced that their side wants the right things, but it just can't happen right now.
Exactly. Let me take a few super chats here before we do that. Before we get into our first main segment of the evening, I just want to give a plug to our Patreon. Patreon.com/do dissidents helps us support this program. It helps us do as many of these streams as we can. We want to thank our new patron signups. This week we have Padraig. I hope I'm saying your name right, but thank you so much for signing up. Stephen D. and Courtney C. You guys are now on the patron scroll. Thank you so much. While we are giving you your due here, I want to just take a few super chats. Your mother was a hamster. I didn't know you were MAGA. Your mother was a hamster. A Trump presidency.
Father smells of elderberries. Sorry.
What this?
Throw that in there.
What's that?
Monty Python. It's for Monty Python. Sorry, it's a line.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the whole reference. What was it?
Your mother was a hamster. Your father smelt the elderberries. Now go away, or I shall taunt you a second time. It's the guy on top of the.
I'm surprised Russell never picked up on that, because Russell's more a Monty Python fan than I am. I like Monty Python. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of them like Russell kind of does, but Russell's never picked up on that. But thank you. Your mother was a hamster. I appreciate that. PMC 499. Nikki Haley will end the Washington status quo. Not sure if that was meant as a joke, but if it was, it's a good one. 499. Thank you, PMC. We appreciate that.
Let's call it a joke.
Yeah, thank you for the donation. Let's call it a joke. Let's take that as a joke and move on. But thank you for the 499. Chris Bishop, fellow Newburgh, New York man, Chris Bishop for the $5. Thank you. If you are progressive, the road for your movement inside the Democratic Party leads to a graveyard. Quote from the great Shama Sawant. Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for the $5. We appreciate that very, very much. All right, our patron scroll is over. Thank you guys very much, of course. So what I want to do is I want to talk now a little bit about the East Palestine, Ohio situation, and I want to approach this from the point of view where we sort of left off, just talking about the sort of impenetrable sort of brain cloud surrounding the average Democratic voter. Now, the Krasenstein brothers are back on Twitter after being banned, and it's good for the podcast that they are back, because they've provided a wealth of material since returning. But here's the response from Brother Ed here. For everyone who is attacking Biden for FEMA not helping out in the aftermath of the toxic derailment in Ohio at this point, you simply don't get it. Norfolk Southern Railway is solely responsible for this disaster at this point, and they are the ones who should be responsible for covering damages, not taxpayers. Republicans are all about saving taxpayer dollars, so they should be thrilled that the company is being forced to pay for damages they cause. Well, so far they're not being forced to pay for anything yet. We don't have a number. FEMA is responsible if Norfolk Southern is incapable of covering damages. So far, this has not been the case. Additionally, FEMA cannot come into a state until the governor, DeWine, who is a Republican governor, has declared an emergency. Facts matter here. That's what they love. Facts matter, right? They're always, right? And this speaks to, Lila, something else that you were saying earlier, which is that they hide behind this step-by-step pragmatism. They hide behind the norms and the guardrails. And this is a major sort of inconsistency of theirs, too. When the Republican is in power, when Trump comes to power, oh, my God, Hitler is here. It's the end of democracy. We're doomed. Yeah. He's this all-powerful God. And then when they have power, it's, well, there's the parliamentarian. We have to think about what they have to say. And, well, there's a filibuster. Well, there's this. Well, there's that. Well, the DeWine has to declare a state of emergency himself before FEMA can come in. Of course, Biden can declare a state of emergency. He's the president, and he can create an independent body, as Stephen Donziger wrote in a great article that he put out. He can, of course, supersede DeWine if he wanted to. And even if that weren't true, you're the president. You have the bully pulpit. You can set foot in the town where it happened before Donald Trump beats you to the punch, which we'll get to in one moment. And you can publicly shame DeWine for dragging his feet on this. There's no doubt that the Republican governor shares some blame in this. We're not Republican partisans here. This isn't actually the Red-Brown Alliance show, right? Like, I have no interest in defending Mike DeWine whatsoever. Of course, he shares some blame here. But you're the president. And
they keep coming back to that. Like, well, this happened. It was because of a reversal that Trump did. Well, that was 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. It was in 2018.
That Trump did.
But I mean, that's what they're going to say, right? I know Obama also has some quite a bit of like they mischaracterized these chemicals, or not misclassified them, right?
The chemical companies lobbied them to change the classification.
And that was
by the time
Obama.
these Obama regulations were in place, vinyl chloride was not on the list of substances that would have required electronic brakings on the train. So to say it was because Trump undid the rule is nonsense. Trump didn't help the situation. He probably made the overall situation a bit worse. Fine, granted. That's
but even
not
if you
why
think
this
that,
happened.
I don't understand these people. He's not the president anymore. Biden has been, it's 2023. Like, if it is under the purview of a president to do something about this by edict or executive action or whatever the hell Trump did, then Biden has that same ability. So how are you letting off the person who is in power right now? because of something the former guy did. Like, I don't even understand logically.
I mean, here's a thought. Talk about it. He had a whole goddamn press conference on the fucking balloons.
Right.
The balloons,
exactly.
which are a non-story. And,
Right.
Yeah.
and honestly,
Right.
this is how I've reached out to my friends the centrist people in my life. I'm like, look, I knew about this thing in Ohio 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And you're turning on CNN every night and you're not seeing anything on it. Nothing. Not a lick. And why is that?
Hundreds of stories in that same time frame. It happened on the 3rd of February. Hundreds of stories on the stupid balloons that turned out to be some like hobby group of balloon people. It's not even anything that they were trying to pretend it was, some national security threat. Nothing until the lever really kept pushing it. I'm so grateful for their reporting because they've really, but you should see, like, obviously all of the vote blue no matter who morons are in David Sirota's timeline telling, yeah.
He gets it from both sides. He's gotten it from us. He's gotten it from our crowd too. But I've always said one of the reasons I don't go after him with the same viciousness I do most people is because they actually do get on the ground and do this work. And their reporting at the lever has been the basis for all of the other reporting on this, basically. So
absolutely.
they have done a fantastic job. But, you mentioned the slow response. Yes, Biden could go out there. He could talk about it. If DeWine is to blame for not creating a state of emergency and allowing the FEMA funds to get there, then publicly shame him for not doing it so you can do it. Of course, this is all a nonsense excuse. He has the authority to put boots on the ground there. Everybody knows that. This is just naked partisan hackery. But to our point earlier, this works on Democratic primary voters. The people who are going to be deciding to vote for Marianne or Joe Biden take this shit seriously, which means I'm sorry, there is no appealing to people who are this unbelievably brainwashed, and I would argue brain dead. Okay? So now you have 2 weeks pass, not one person from the Biden admin sets foot in that town. And who jumps in? Donald Trump. Issuing a statement here, Biden and FEMA said they would not be sending federal aid to East Palestine. As soon as I announced that I'm going, which he announced, yesterday or the day before? The days are kind of blurring together now. Hopefully, he will also be there. He announced that a team will go. This is good news because we got them to, quote unquote, move. The people of East Palestine need help. I'll see you on Wednesday. Now, we know that
paper towels or whatever.
Exactly. I'll be there with paper towels. Yeah.
But
we know. Sorry, go
it's
ahead.
hilarious that he's like, why won't you be there now? Because it's not safe to be there. So they're waiting a fucking whole week. I'll be there in a week. And Biden and nobody on his team is like, well, we'll be there in 6 days.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be there because they know it's fucking dangerous.
Wear a fucking mask. Wear a mask. Masks work.
Right, exactly. You could be onto something. They might show up with the mask there just outside with no one around them. All of a sudden, we're back. Right, exactly. So, but the thing that's astounding about this is that that Trump got elected in 2016 by appealing to disaffected voters in the upper Midwest who felt neglected by Washington. And yet you still... 7 years after that, let him beat you to the punch when there's a train derailment in eastern Ohio. This is literally the heart of the Rust Belt. This is the heart of Trump country. The Youngstown, Ohio area and the western PA, Pittsburgh suburbs. This is where Trump ran up the score. Yeah. This is literally how he got elected. And they let him beat them to the punch again. It's just astounding. It's astounding.
It really goes to, you said this earlier, but Democrats clearly don't care if they lose to Trump or DeSantis. Of course, they don't care, right? So this is just another, there were Proud Boys there giving out water. How do you let Proud Boys beat Democrats or progressives? Where Jamal Bowman did put out a tweet, but where is everybody? Get on the ground because they are leaving a vacuum for fascism. Which they've been doing now for years, but yeah.
Yeah, and if you like Bernie still, and I like Bernie on a lot of levels, but cover your ears because he fucking covered for Pete Buttigieg.
Oh. Of course he did, yes.
He was asked
about that, yeah.
He was asked, how do you feel about Pete Buttigieg? And he said, was he driving the train?
Right, he covered his ass.
Which, by the way, sorry, that does two things. One, it absolves Pete Buttigieg, who's a fucking disgusting, corrupt little sniveling rat. But it also places blame on the poor worker who was driving that, which it wasn't his fault. Maybe you don't break the strike of workers who are arguing about this, who are sounding the alarm about this very safety concern. So it's not the person driving the train's fault. It's maybe your good friend Joe shouldn't have broken a strike.
Right.
That's
it was an axle. It was a faulty axle. Right.
But all of those reasons are why they hid this story for 10 days from the mainstream media. I mean,
exactly.
It hit all the notes. It hit Joe union busting. It hit Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, who maybe, if things fall apart with Biden is their guy, or maybe he's replacing Kamala. I don't know, but who knows? But like every level of like, you really need to pay attention to the Democrats being shitty could be pointed out by this incident.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's just an astounding thing that they allowed Donald Trump to get on the ground first and act as if he is driving the response. Because now Trump gets to claim, hey, it wasn't until I made a real political issue out of this because whatever. David Sirota in his blog, I mean, I'm grateful for the work he's done, but how much legs is that? Trump going in there and making this an issue and Biden following that up, by sending FEMA in, of course he's going to take credit. Now you're screwed either way, because now if you respond and even do fairly well from here on out, which we have no reason to think they will, Trump gets to say, well, it's because of me. I shamed you into doing it.
Yeah. But it's still amazing to me that Trump puts Wednesday out and they can't beat him to it. Like they can still change this.
They can't one up
fucking Wednesday.
Oh yeah,
I will be there in 2 months because the Democrats are cowards.
Right.
And I will drink the water in a resort hotel. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
What the fuck? It's so easy to beat the Republicans if you want to, is the point.
Of course, yeah. Christian Drake, thank you for the $5. And thank you, by the way, for I believe you tried to score me an invite to the Vanguard panel earlier. I believe you liked my reply, but so it didn't work. But thank you for your help, my friend. If we can illegally invade countries with black op wars via the CIA, you'd think we could invade Ohio with bottled water or something. I mean, look, on the response issue, there is a question of what could our response be. On the sort of just more sort of populist, sort of Teddy Roosevelt front, you can crack the whip on Norfolk Southern and make them pay for what they've done, or at least humiliate the hell out of them for what they've done. Instead, we heard nothing. We didn't hear a statement on this until Pete Buttigieg was shamed.
There will be more derailments. He said there'll be more derailments. That was his big.
It happens.
Don't worry.
It happens 1,000 times a year, and it'll keep happening. It's fairly common. There are about 3 train derailments a day in this country, which is nothing to boast about as a transportation secretary, number one. Number two, not all of them carry 5 cars worth of vinyl chloride that then have to be released into the atmosphere, such that a cloud of smoke visible literally from outer space appears over the town. We showed this on, I think it was the last show, or maybe it was this show before. That cloud appeared on satellite images.
Which is also like, it shows like the liberals who are like, well, maybe they should have voted better. Didn't Ohio vote for Trump? Like,
and we heard some of that.
It's a red state.
Like, first of all, like, so disgusting. But second, those trains travel across the whole United States. That water is going, the air. I mean, what are you talking about?
Could have just as easily happened in blue Pittsburgh, right? You know what I mean? Like, 100%. Just kind of luck, right?
Even if you're like that kind of an asshole that wishes awful stuff on people,
But Science Guy Biden, I mean, they're out there telling people it's safe. And the reality is nobody can declare that safe because that the chemicals are going to leach into, it's going to take 1 year to 2 years for that stuff to leach into the water. I mean, unless it's actually in the river directly, but it'll leach through to the water soil,
when it rains. Exactly. Yeah.
I live in the Hudson Valley region of New York. A couple days ago, the local weather service responded to multiple people complaining that there was a weird smell in the air. It smelled like perfume or something. There's some weird chemical smell. And local news actually covered it. And people were wondering, is this carried over via the jet stream? Because the jet stream moves from west to east. Does this have something to do with that spill? We're not saying it does. But when you just look at what is available, look at the images. This is a massive ecological disaster. It's a massive disaster. And yeah, the lack of response is just quite amazing.
It really just shows you. I mean, I think we all know anyway, but you see the response to climate disaster. Nobody's being held responsible. The poisons that we're eating, the poisons they're emitting, the response to COVID, where we let over 1 million of our own people die, no health care, starting wars, the fact that we blow up Nord Stream pipeline, which is probably the biggest ecological act of terrorism in my lifetime. Nobody's even talking about it. Doesn't matter. So I don't know what's ever going to get through to anybody.
Incredible. Just amazing. All right, we're going to move on to our second / sort of main topic of the evening here. At Occupy Wall Street, they had mic checks. Here at Due Dissonance, we have like checks. Like check. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What's that?
I'm sorry. Catchy.
Yeah,
we're always looking for tips because we are so bad at promoting ourselves.
We're stealing it.
Yeah, you guys can have it. That's fine. That's fine. I'm a socialist. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. All right. Well, what we're going to do here, we are going to talk now about the Rage Against the War Machine rally. And Pat and Lila are here as our guest hosts. But I did just happen to reach out to a friend of ours who was at the rally today. He was not a speaker at the rally, but he was in attendance. And I did want to get the audience perspective on this rally because I really think there was as much action happening off stage as there was on stage, because the premise of this rally is that people who don't agree with each other on many things and perhaps don't even like each other can sort of set those differences aside and unite behind a common purpose. And so, friend of the show and host of the Indie News Network's program, Colin Radix Carter, is here. Colin, what's up, man? Good to see you again.
Good. How are you, Keen? How are you doing, Leah and Pat? Nice to see you guys.
Hey, Colin.
We're doing great, man. We're doing great. You live in the DC area, so you were able to get back home where you are now, and I figured you would be. I figured you would be available because you live right near DC. So I figured
I am in I live in DC proper. So yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah. So excellent. It's like I'm like 3 miles away from the Lincoln Memorial. So just a straight shot from my apartment to get there. Excellent.
Well, you were there, and you, I assume, were there for the rally and the march. What was it like? Just generally, what was turnout like? What was the vibe like? How'd it go?
I mean, I would say easily there was about 1,000 people there, and I would say it was fairly peaceful. Everyone was having a good time from what I was observing. There weren't any major issues from what I can understand, at least from my perspective. So yeah, there was just a lot of, I heard a lot of warnings, online, just people being like, you gotta be careful, there could be some stuff that can go down, there may be some bad actors, but also keep in mind, this is DC. This is kind of one of the more secure cities in the country in order to do stuff like this, especially to do something this big. And I'm pretty sure like after January 6th, they're going to take more precautions, if anything else, than they have, since then. But yeah, it was fine for me. So, it was just a normal rally.
Was there any media there that wasn't like independent lefty media?
Not that I can see.
I'm just wondering.
And actually, I was by the media booth because I was talking to a few people there, but there was no one in mainstream media who was there. Yeah. I mean, kind of obvious it wouldn't be. But,
right. Yeah, there was a stream that the People's Podcast put up. Unfortunately, they didn't get the stream going. They must have had some sort of difficulty with the internet or something, because I missed the first few speakers. I missed the Hedges speech, and I missed the Blumenthal speech. I mean, I heard them on a different stream, but the quality was a little lousy. So I'm hopefully a good video emerges of them, because I'd like to feature their speeches. But we are going to play some speeches from this rally here. We have 4 segments from 4 of the speakers. And like I said, it went long. It went from 12:30 to 4:30, so I couldn't start pulling clips until after the rally ended, which left me very little time to prep the show. So we'll play more of this next, on Thursday. But we have a few clips that we're going to play. But Lila and Pat, I'd like to get your just overall impressions of the rally. I know you guys watched a little bit of it. Pat, you said you watched some of it. What were your impressions of the rally, both in terms of just the concept the sort of premise of a sort of cross-partisan anti-war coalition. And from what you saw of it, at least, what did you think of the execution?
So I know there was a lot of controversy about some of the organizers who came together. And, you know, as somebody who didn't organize the rally, I feel a little, I would have not chosen to organize with some of the people who were invited. It is interesting to me that some of the people who didn't want to have those conversations are fine having the, do you pronounce it Mises caucus?
Mrs.
There?
I think
Yeah.
they're the Mrs.
Mrs. Mises. Yes. Okay.
Oh, they are
Caucus.
Mises. Okay.
Yeah, there. And that's not cancelable, but some of the same people who are fine with that are like, you know, Fraud Squad and Bernie's a cuck and da da da. Like, so I feel like I understand sometimes coming together with people that you don't agree with everything on for a bigger cause. But it's a little bit, I think, disingenuous to some of, but you know, I shouldn't judge the whole rally on other people's ideas about the rally. I appreciate that there was an anti-war rally at all, because I am vehemently opposed to this. We have got to negotiate peace. We could have avoided all of this from everything that's come out over the past year. This whole war could have been avoided, and it wasn't. So I appreciate that anybody is getting out there and loudly speaking against war.
Yeah. I do want to say, because I said this on Savvy's stream, I think earlier this evening, just the idea of, honestly, the fact, really, this is kind of our lack on the left to really do something like this. Because honestly, if we were a little bit more organized, and if there isn't so much, and granted, there's infighting, yes, but honestly, with the fact that this war has been going on for a year now, just about, we should have been able, like, collectively, we know organizations that we're able to partner with to pull off something like this. Probably not on the same scale, but something close, I would imagine. We should have done this last year. Yeah. So the fact that the organizers had a lane to do this, and
it's really damning.
It's really damning, and really, we can't really say anything, because you gave people an opportunity that you may not necessarily like, and you had people who spoke at an event that you didn't necessarily like, fine. But, you know, I do put some blame on independent media to a degree on this too. But at the same time, it's like, collectively on the left, we should have done this already. If anything, we should have been having these events.
Yeah.
Pat, you got anything?
I mean, so my general take is it's a net positive. I don't think it's a bad thing that this happened. I think it's good. I think we needed, you know, you can get some attention, whether the mainstream press covers it or not. And like Colin said, you know, you've got people forming, I wouldn't call it coalitions, but you agree on issues. You can maybe get another rally down the road and have some of these people be your allies. My criticism of the event is it's an anti-war event. So I cannot like the people and agree with some of the people there on issues, but you should be anti-war. And on my feed, the entire time behind the feed is a Russian flag and a LaRouche flag. So those are not, those are not, you know, supporting Russia. I get some people are going to feel like that's an anti-war position, but a lot of people aren't going to jive with that. They're not like, you know, if you're anti-imperialism, you're anti-imperialism, period. And that includes Russia, who was not actually attacked. Now they were provoked, but they started this war. So, I mean, you know, picking sides is something the rally should steer clear of. They should have steered clear of people who are picking side being speakers. Now, having said that, I still think it's a net positive. I still think in general, the discussion is happening. The left is seeing, you know, I don't think uniting with the right is wrong on this issue. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah. I mean, I think two quick things, and then I will toss to Colin, because I could tell you got something to say. I think that I think the Russian flag in the background on the video feed was a ballsy choice. And you know what? I have to I understand where you're coming from with that. I understand how just the optics of that to people who are perhaps curious but not yet sold on this might think, whoa. I gotta say though, man, I give the organizers credit for not moving that guy aside, for just letting him do his thing. Like, we're not going to police people's expression here. If there's a Russian flag that happens to be in the background of the video feed, then that's that. You know, he's got every right to be here and say what he wants. We're not going to make a move, as opposed to like Mayor Pete, who puts the 6 black voters that he has with him in the front row of his Iowa victory party. You know, like they weren't going to do that. You know, so I actually give them credit for that, even though I understand, Pat, what you're saying, how just the optics of that are a bit tough, and you seem to have a problem more with the substance of it even than the optics of it. But even the more nakedly pro-Russian speakers there, like Jackson Hinkle, I thought Hinkle's speech was pretty good, man. Hinkle said, you know, they're sending these 16, 17-year-old kids to the front line, meaning the Ukrainian government. The average life expectancy on the front line in this war is 4 hours. And so, you know, I thought he just made a sort of pro-human anti-war argument. He wasn't up there, you know, talking about his pro-Putin stances and things like that. He was up there just basically articulating a version of the overall war is hell message.
At the same time, though, that gives a platform for him to people who haven't seen him to say, hell, this is a reasonable guy supported by all these other anti-war people. And then it turns out he's really actually pro-war. He's on the Russian side.
Well, I mean, look, he has articulated.
There's a danger in some of that.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily agree that there's a danger, because I trust people to follow him if they want, and they can evaluate what he has to say. And if they don't like it, they don't have to watch him again. You know, I don't necessarily feel that that's dangerous. Like, I don't believe that exposing people to other point of views is necessarily a danger. Could he get some followers out of it? Maybe you don't agree with him, and so maybe you don't want him to get followed. Yeah, certainly that's a risk. But look, the same is true for the lefty speakers who spoke there. And, you know, for the people who wanted this to be more left-wing, well, maybe the left wing should be a little more fucking anti-war, because most of the anti-war voices nowadays are not on the left. They're on the right. And a lot of the ones on the left were too butthurt about the inclusion of certain speakers they don't like to show up at the fucking thing. Code Pink didn't let Medea Benjamin speak. I'll get into that later, but I know, Colin, you've been waiting, and sorry, I went on too long.
No, I'm good, but you're good. But a couple of things, Pat, and I will speak to you on this. Like, there were people with Ukrainian flags there. There were Russian communist flags there. You know, so, but I think, you know, especially given with Tara Reid in what she said in her speech, she made it pro-human in terms of Russia isn't the enemy here. It's the system that is. And I think this is I think she kind of said it very well in terms of, you know, even in Ukraine, she was like, look, they're suffering too, you know, in the midst of all of this. The people there are suffering. So we have to look at it in terms of what are we in terms of the imperialism that exists in the West is doing, you know, not just to Europe, but also in Russia as well, number one. And then number two, and I've said this, you know, on INN a few times, and I said it on my stream last week. You know, ultimately, and this is the thing that I'm hoping for in light of all of this. And I agree, there are speakers there that, you know, are left to be desired, and, you know, but they're there. But it's not. But if you're making this about the speakers, then versus the people who are attending, whether they're on the left or the right, and their response of what they're going to do as of now, because the rally is over. And I've said this, you know, like, the rally is good and needed, but let's be honest here, having a rally, especially in our modern area, doesn't have the same type of impact that like something like that in the 60s would have occurred. You know, look what happened with, you know, George Floyd protests, which I also was present for. What has come out of that? And if anything, when I was there, I saw a lot of activists saying, and many of them of color saying, we have to vote for Biden because Trump bad, which
Wow.
I was like screaming at the rafters at like them making that call that, that really wasn't a call for them to make. But again, it was in the context of rally/protest, and I said my grievances, but ultimately that's what it was. But the intention is not on the speakers. The intention is the people. So my question that I've been saying is, okay, we've had this rally. The question, where do we go from here? How are the people there going to respond to, okay, if you're going to be anti-war, what are you going to do on the ground where you live in terms of promoting an anti-war message to your family, to your friends, to your town, to your city? That's the conversations that we need to be having.
Right.
Because not everybody, I'm just very fortunate that this happened to be in BC, and a lot of people can make it. Like traveling is expensive, lodging is expensive. So, a lot of people, thank God we have, being able to access this online. But we need to encourage people right now, and this is where I hope the conversation ends up being is, okay, what can normal people do in response to whether or not you like the speakers or not? Ultimately, it's up to us to do something. So those are the conversations that I think we should be having that as of now, I really haven't heard. But that's what my hope moving out from this is, what are we going to do from here? Because we've had enough rallies where it's cute in the moment, and then that whole energy dissipates and you don't hear about it again.
Well, sorry.
No. Go ahead. Absolutely.
Well, so, a little bit, and again, you're right. The left did not put something like this together, and that is like wildly unfortunate. And it's hard not to question some of the motives behind the organizers, who included some people who they knew would be incendiary on some level, and maybe even pro-war on a different level. And then I know there have been questions about the money raised that was donated to this and where that's going to be going. And as you said, it's really an unfortunate diversion, because right now we are over a year into this war that is killing hundreds of thousands of people. It's had horrific ecological ramifications, and it's destroying a whole country. And of course, BlackRock and JP Morgan are diving in there to make tons of money off of the lives of all the people who've been lost. And what is the next step? And unfortunately, because of some of the people who were invited, like if the hope is from the outside to engage people who are on the inside, who could then push Biden and the people in power towards some sort of negotiated peace, which, they signed their name to a letter, and with one little pushback, they all, withdraw their name from the letter. So these are not the strongest people with lots of integrity on any level. And it feels a little bit like they were given an excuse not to attend or show up or do any, what is the inside outside strategy from this war rally? Like, who were they hoping with the people in power to target?
Right. And I think those are valid. And not to say, what you mentioned as far as the finances, that's not also valid. And some of the speakers there are also valid. Like, I would have loved to have more left voices more represented. I would have loved to have more people of color represented. But at the end of the day, I didn't organize it. So, I can't control all of that. What I can control, especially in terms of my channel and my platform, is how do people respond from this? And as I said, whether or not you agree or disagree or like or don't like whoever spoke, whatever, that's not really the issue.
Right.
The issue is we're in the midst of, if we're not careful, coming up on World War III at any point. And we need to have serious conversations. And I heard what Matt said, I just watched a clip. He said the fact that there was only 1,000 people there was a little disappointing to him, because I think at the end of the day, there were people who probably were deterred to go based on the controversy, which I can understand, but there should have been way more people there, or at least representative of the idea for anti-war. So
yeah, I mean,
but see,
sorry, go ahead.
But
go ahead.
To me, that's where it comes down to, like I said, I support the event. I think it was a good thing to do, but you can't blame the people showing up when you are by default bringing a few anti-war people in. And so even if I can say, I can look past speaker X, speaker Y, I can understand why some people can't. And that is going to hurt your audience and attendance as well. And you can't push for unity on the left while not addressing some of their concerns as well. So to me, I can understand both sides of the argument. And I think we need to be able to do that. And to start a war with people who are pointing out actual truths about some of these speakers not being anti-war I don't see that as being beneficial to any sort of solidarity on the issue.
Well, I mean, look, what I would say is just a couple of quick things. And we have to do a little bit of capitalism here and read our super chats. Don't worry, I didn't forget you guys. Please like this stream and subscribe to this channel. By the way, we got a big crowd in here. If it's your first time here, please hit that like button and please hit that subscribe button. I doubt very much that the People's Party, that Nick Brana slammed the door in the face of any left-wing speaker who wanted to show up. I know of 2 left-wing speakers, Matt Ho, who's a great guy we've had on the show a couple times, and obviously Medea Benjamin, who opted out of speaking. Now, Medea Benjamin showed up anyway because she personally was supportive of the rally, and so she fired off a tweet with a photo of herself here. Right? It's great being at the Rage Against the War Machine rally with all kinds of people who want to end the war in Ukraine. Hashtag peace in Ukraine. The anti-war rally in New York City, which we covered a little bit, which Russell actually went to, had a few hundred people. She was in attendance for that rally. She was spotted there. My dad was there. He saw her there. Russell saw her there. She did not tweet out anything from that rally. So, if we're going to question motivations, at a certain point, there is a lack of seriousness on the left about actually making a real impact. And I know that sounds like a very, very harsh thing to say about Medea Benjamin, because she certainly has the receipts to prove she's been in this fight for a long time. But one of the things that, Colin, you kind of, I think, touched on, if you didn't say this explicitly, is to what end? At a certain point, do you have to say, how successful have these anti-war activists been? Not very, as evidenced by the fact that these wars start whatever they want, and there's little to no pushback whatsoever. Tucker Carlson covered this war rally 2 nights ago. Tara Reid went on his show and talked about it. Now, some people would say that discredits the rally. I think it's just the opposite. It becomes a question. Do you want to grow a movement or not? And the fact that you had people from the left drop out and more people from the right show up is, to me, a reflection of the political attitudes of left-wingers and right-wingers, broadly speaking. Obviously, this does not apply to everybody, but there is a major tendency on the left to take your ball and go home and feel morally superior, and there's a tendency on the right to go and engage. That's just a fact. It's just a fact. And if we wanted more left-wing representation at the rally, then more left-wingers should have, stomached being in the presence of Jackson Hinkle for a few hours and shown up and give their speech.
Right. I mean, it's in point, January 6th. And that's the thing on the right that I mentioned today that we don't do well on the left at all. If there's something going on, the right shows up. They show up and show out. The left, we overanalyze and critique and call out, to the point where it's we don't, as Keen said, we take our ball, go home, because we argue, we overanalyze it to the point where you can't analyze it anymore, and instead it's just go ahead.
Sorry, I do just want to say, because yes, there's a part of it, I have not been personally affected by any of the people on that stage. But there are some women who have been, and who are, big players on the left. And I think when, I'm sorry, but when somebody has been credibly accused of sexual assault, and part of the problem with the left is that we do care about our comrades, and we do care about people who have been marginalized. And when the right says, "Oh, we can't weigh ourselves down with purity politics and talking about pronouns or civil rights," or like we're going to dismiss that so we can move on, that rubs a lot of people on the left the wrong way, because there is a place for all of that as we are fighting for the policies that we want. I don't want to sideline anybody on the march towards peace or towards Medicare for all. And I think that, and I'm not saying that about you, but I think that there are people who voice their concerns about some of the speakers or some of the whole groups that were being organized with. And those concerns were sort of denigrated by some of the people who were organizing. And so, I mean, listen, I'm still happy that there was a rally. I'm happy that it got 1,000 people. I wish it had been more. As you said, those George Floyd protests, which I think we all went to and which were the biggest mass movement protests, resulted in fucking Joe Biden getting elected and then giving more money to police. So it does feel a little hopeless. And like, if we all are nitpicking at who was there and everything, maybe we just get mired down in that and nothing ever moves forward. But I just wanted to sort of give a little bit of voice for the people who were feeling like they did not want to partner with the Mises caucus or,
Well, Leah, to your point, because I know who you were
Sorry,
talking
Lila. I'm just saying Lila.
Lila,
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
I spoke to the person in question. Who you
Okay.
mentioned, and actually it's public because I said this on Twitter just this week. And I've spoken to her privately, in terms of her situation. But I also said to her in terms of this, because the argument that she was making, and a lot of people on the left that were making, which is true, is this seems to be like overly highlighted, and there are smaller rallies that are going on in different towns or whatever that are never talked about. Right. And I think that's definitely valid. So to her, I said, I would love to ally with you because we both have platforms where we're able to share this. And we have audiences that tell us, let's figure out a way of where we can highlight, for example, the Code Think rally. I'm going to go to that since, I'm in DC.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm just going to put this up on a screen because I feel like if we're going to ask that people set differences aside, yes, I'm going to plug that Code Pink rally. Absolutely. Even though I really disagree with how they handled this. You don't muzzle the spokesperson for your movement. She wants to speak there. She speaks there. Okay, that's it. But anyway, that aside, I tweeted something at them that was a little more sharply worded than that, but I somewhat regret that, so I won't repeat it. Not really, but for the sake of being diplomatic. Answer Coalition here. We're working to build an anti-imperialist, anti-racist movement to confront the U.S. war machine. Rally with us at the White House and nationwide March 18th to demand an end to all U.S. wars. Absolutely, people should go to that. I hope that one gets a bigger crowd than this one. I hope every anti-war rally gets a bigger crowd than the anti-war rally that came, prior. I don't have an axe to grind against these people. It's not about what I think of Code Pink, right? That's irrelevance. That was the point of this rally.
Right.
Was saying, can we set that aside? And so, yes, of course, I urge people to go to this one. And I hope that everyone who spoke at this rally will do the same. I hope there is no, vindictiveness on any of these guys' part. I think, in fact, if you really want to prove your theory that a cross-partisan coalition is possible and that differences can be set aside for the greater good, I think everyone who spoke at this rally should promote this next one, 100%.
Yeah. And so I think if that's the issue, then among it, many. But I think if this is an issue of this seemed to be the big one, or okay, we know about this, let's highlight it. We have audience members who do stuff, and I'm fortunate enough to hear of certain actions that happen, throughout the country, highlight that on your show. Not everyone's going to go, but I think at minimum, if we kind of elevate the idea of my thing is, I don't want this to be a one and done thing,
It can't be one. No, that would be
right.
No,
there
would
would
be no
so, which I think that's kind of the danger of these things. It's kind of it's nice to hang and hear some nice speeches from people, and then you go home and you live your normal life.
Sorry, I just saw a comment. Lila is a Fed, which is hilarious to me.
The chat is goddamn ridiculous. I gotta just say, it's you guys realize, like, you can have a discussion about this and have a different opinion on a rally that a lot of people don't agree with, and not be a fucking Fed.
Yeah, they're not Feds.
Like,
don't worry.
Come on.
Yeah.
I vet the guests better than
like
that.
The same people who are
deeper than that. Like,
canceling
are you that
AOC and
fucking
Bernie
stupid?
Sanders.
Who said
to
that?
work with the Mises
Whoever
crowd.
said
Like,
that can
come
eat my
on.
dick.
All right, let me get to something here. Garble for the $5. Thank you. The left is a bucket of crabs. One rises up and does something productive, and the other crabs pull it down. Pathological perfectionism. That was from about 15 minutes ago. But yes, no, I agree with that. Let me see here. Red Z. I want to figure out either intra-party boundaries or policy quick wins. Does 50% of our ideas overlap? Maybe we should, I guess, weed out what's important. Yeah, well, I think that was sort of the point of this, is just sort of singling out, filtering out an issue that there can be some sort of cross-partisan, either, whether you say partnership, coalition, agreement on. Thank you, Red Z. If you're pro-peace talks, then you're not pro-war. Yeah, this was something that I've heard some of these arguments. And I think whether you agree with those arguments or not, I think some of the people who say that, like, look, there have been peace talks attempted and that the West has played a role in sabotaging those peace talks. And, that's just a fact. So I think that is something that gives credence to the point of view that, this is the West's war, I think, as much, if not more, than anyone else's. And it's certainly, we as citizens of the United States have a responsibility to petition our government, and to the extent that we should do so to make peace. Absolutely. Do we have any other super chats here? Man, we got a lot of comments here. Keaton is a Fed. Yeah, you guys have all. Yeah.
I don't think you don't.
You can all expect a knock on the door. We all expect a knock on the door in a few minutes. Yeah. By the way, this is all a big setup. Absolutely. Yeah. Keaton is like 2 Feds. You're so Feds. Thanks, Extra Bull. Extra Bulla was our first Russell Daviler substitute host. Anyway, all right, let's play a few of these clips, and then we can wrap up here. So, like I said, the rally ended at 4:30, and so are you new here? God damn this kid. Well, no, the Vanguard guys did call our audience, what do they call them? The most depraved and delusional audience online. Yeah, so yeah, it could, like I said, this is why I said, when you get overwhelmingly high score, it's very hard to get a good audience score here. But I think you guys are doing fine. And no, Pat and Lila are absolutely not Feds. I know better. I have a little more street smarts than that. All right, so let's go. I gave preferential treatment to people we've interviewed on the show, obviously, because I only had a few minutes. So first up, Jose Vega, who is one of the infamous AOC protesters. He went viral a while back. He just confronted Richie Torres at a town hall last week. We had him on this last Thursday. He didn't tell me he was speaking here. I wish he did. We would have talked more, but
that might have been last minute, to be fair. So
maybe he figured out a way to maybe he wiggled his way up there when he got there today. Who knows? But here's Jose Vega talking about his tenure as a protester and our responsibility as citizens to get in politicians' faces.
Ask me, like, how do you just start doing that? How do you just stand up and start going after politicians? Well, the truth is, I'm an American citizen. And I know what that means. There's an old saying that goes, know where you stand and then stand there. And where are we standing today? 100 years ago, this Lincoln Memorial was constructed. And inside, there's a sentence from the Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which says that we highly resolve that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. But how do you actually do that? My answer is we have to be that free government that we intend to preserve, to improve, or to create. We, not our elected representatives, are the fourth branch of government. We are not congressmen. We are not judges. We are not the executive branch. We are more than that. We are the people. We are not a political party. We are the people. And we have the responsibility not to be divided in the face of injustice. What we do in America affects the whole world. So why are we, the people, doing nothing to stop our unjust wars? The bankers of Wall Street, City of London, the bankrollers, and the war profiteers hate you, us, as much as they hate Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, and maybe more.
All right. Yeah, he went on to say that, the people are really the fourth branch of government. I think he made that argument. And I think that's a good point. He's been out there, for the past few months. That AOC action, which went viral, that was months ago. And so, I'm happy for him that he could get a speaking slot up there. He looked like he had written it down, though. It was on his phone, right?
Yeah.
Let's play one more, and then we'll get some of you guys' takes on this here. This is Craig Pasta Jardula from the Convo Couch here. He's got, maybe it's the New Yorker in me, but I like Pasta quite a bit. And, he I thought made, I think, the most sort of on-the-nose appeal to a sort of pox on both their houses when it comes to Democrats and Republicans. And I thought that was good. I thought it was good to do that, especially since you had a lot of left-wingers and right-wingers in the audience. So here's an excerpt from his speech, which I thought was very well done.
We have to do. Now, the first thing we have to do is realize that we have no friends here in Washington. For we have a Congress that is more like professional wrestling. The Democrats. And no, let me say this much. They are not the lesser of two evils. These parties, they appear to be oppositions, but they're really not. And what are the Democrats? They are the let's send weapons to Ukraine Democrats, the let's invade Haiti Democrats, the let's sanction the hell out of Syria Democrats, the, I like this one, the we came, we saw, he died Democrats.
Only Hillary impressed the rally, too.
The CIA and the FBI are now the good guy Democrats. Basically, they are the Trump derangement syndrome Democrats. In other words, they're just the synthetic left. And the Republicans, are they really any better? Really? I mean, let's not forget that this Ukraine war wouldn't have started if it wasn't for Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell going to Ukraine in 2016 and then talking to Nazis to go invade the Donbass. Mitch McConnell was just seeing Zelensky last year in a delegation with the Republicans. Let's not forget, they're also the Afghan war and the Iraq war Republicans. Let's sanction the hell of the Nicaraguans, Venezuela, and Cuba because they're socialist Republicans. The let's take on China because of a balloon Republicans. They are, in essence, we still remember who you are, Republicans. And yes, Matt Gaetz is now floating a bill out there to end the Ukraine war, and that's great. You want to end war, so be it. I'm all for it. Frankly, I think you're a little bit too late because almost 250,000 people are dead. But let me just say this to the Republicans out there right now. Don't think for 1 second, we're going to let you defund a war in Kiev against Moscow and then take that money over to Taiwan and start another proxy war with Beijing. It's not going to happen.
All right. So I want to get your takes on that. I just want to say, Manish Mims, I think that's your name. Don't talk like that. I'm not going to put your comment on the screen. It was a while back. But listen, these guys are not feds. They're honest guys. They're taking time to be here tonight. They're the guests on the show. We have viewpoint diverse guests on here all the time. Their views are not all that different from ours, actually. But they're serious guys, and they're guests on the show, taking their time, so they don't deserve to be spoken to like that. And I don't know how to give you a timeout or to block you or anything, and I don't intend to. We'd like to make this a free speech zone, but please. All right.
No worries on any of that. Like, everyone should have their view, but I think it's really, we have to stop attacking people. Like you guys are saying, work with the right on this stuff and don't criticize the speakers. And then I have a nuanced opinion on it, and I get attacked as a fucking fed.
Exactly.
So, like, if you can't see the hypocrisy in that, I can't fucking help you.
Right, exactly.
You know,
right.
I agree entirely with Roger Waters' speech, which is that he criticized Russia and he criticized Ukraine.
And
he criticized
Hedges.
the U.S. And, I didn't see Hedges, unfortunately.
Well, nobody saw Hedges because they didn't get the live stream working in time. But I heard a lousy audio version of Hedges, who's my favorite of these speakers, by the way.
I think Sabby might have gotten all of it.
She did,
Oh,
but
really?
I
Okay,
think
good.
the audio was still a little loud.
Oh, it is?
I'm hoping I'm gonna play Hedges' speech probably Thursday if I can get a good. If I can't find the good video, I'll use Sabby's. But if not, I'll play his because I was looking forward to his, but unfortunately, it just didn't hook up in time. Anyway,
I thought that Craig's speech was fantastic, and I like that he called out both parties. I mean, whatever people in the chat are going to say what they're going to say, and I see a lot of friends in the chat also. Pat and I are completely anti this war. One of our first shows right when the war started was really castigating everybody who was pushing all of the bullshit about Zelensky being a hero and the lies that they were spewing about the ghost of Kiev and all. I mean, we are 100% against this war.
Pretty much every week we put something out bashing the war.
Yeah.
So
and lionizing Zelensky or Ukraine as some democracy when it isn't. It's, I think, the most year after year has been considered the most corrupt nation in Europe, and he's only furthered the corruption since he's been in power and since the war has started. So, anyway, I thought that both of those speeches were great, and absolutely anybody in a position of power should be called out every chance we all get. It is disgusting that we've had no national conversation about getting into this war. It's disgusting that we are giving them tens of billions of dollars week after week after week. Especially disgusting when our own country, we have 500,000-600,000 people sleeping on the streets every night. And I know, the MMT people will come after me like it doesn't matter because the money could be, but it's just an example of the priorities of our country and all of these loans, all of these people who are coming in, the BlackRocks and the JP Morgans, those loans are going to be guaranteed basically by US taxpayers, right? So they're going to come in, they're going to make billions of dollars off of rebuilding, privatizing this whole country. But that's just another wealth transfer from all of us to them. So, I am completely against every part of this war. And I just hope that there's more, I'm in Los Angeles. I couldn't travel there, but I hope that there is more activism about this. It is really disappointing that there is not a single corporate media who's going to put focus on these rallies or really ask the administration and the Congress why they continue to funnel all of our money to the Pentagon and the military industrial complex to, continue killing Ukrainian soldiers and decimating their country just to weaken Russia.
Well, to Tucker Carlson's praise, he did mention it on his show.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, which is so.
Which
they weren't there today with the cruise, but they mentioned it in the run-up. Yeah,
right. But again, that kind of shows.
Yeah,
the right is willing to do this.
Yep, you're right.
Why not MSNBC or CNN? Same thing I remember for the Marches for America. Well, I think both of them didn't play it, but I remember, I think it was Fox News who ended up after the fact having an article about the Marches for America for a couple of years ago. Didn't hear anything about it on any other liberal mainstream media outlet at all. So
unless it was to make fun of it and how few people were there. Yeah, no, it's disgusting. I totally agree with you.
Sean Penn is a Fed. That one's not good. Yeah, no, that one. He came out at this film festival because he just did a documentary. He said we should have given them more money sooner. We've been giving them money and weapons since 2013, 2014. Yeah. I mean, my God.
He said Zelensky was born for this moment. It was like a Beto O'Rourke kind of,
Yeah.
Well, people forget that Zelensky was literally caught up in the Pandora Papers as being the most corrupt president in history there, and was hated by all his own people before this war started. So he's a corrupt motherfucker. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's major rehabilitation for him. Don't worry, SD. We're going to play a little Jimmy speech. We have to get our obligatory ball riding in for the evening. We live up to our have to live up to our reputation. We're going to play 1 minute of Jimmy, and then we're going to play for one. And, you know, obviously, Colin, you were there for the whole thing. Everybody can have their point of view on this. I thought Tulsi was the best. I thought her speech was the best of them. Perhaps I put Hedges. Again, I couldn't really hear most of Hedges, but I thought hers, from what I saw, which is almost every single one except those two when the stream was still rough, I thought she did great. But first, let's hear a little piece of Jimmy Dore.
Douglas, who said, I'm reminded of the words of Frederick Douglass, who said, I will join with anyone to do good, but with no one to do bad. If Black Panthers can march hand in hand with the KKK down Las Vegas Boulevard to get welfare payments reinstated, we can join hands with the right wing, the libertarians, the left, the socialists, the communists, everybody to stop a nuclear war. And what's happening right here at this rally is what actually scares the hell out of the establishment. Everybody from the left, everybody from the right, everybody from the middle coming together to realize that we have more in common than divides us, and we share a common enemy. That enemy is the military-industrial complex and the oligarchy.
All right, so that was sort of, like I said, a little bit of a different take on the pasta speech, but yeah, no, I thought, you know, same idea there. And now I want to play Tulsi. Thank you, Tom. Great show tonight. Keep up the great work. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for the donation. This is about 3 minutes long. I thought this was the strongest. I thought the strongest speeches were the ones, and maybe there's a little bit of subjectivity here because I am anti-war in the same sense that, you know, Chris Hedges is anti-war just from this just very thematic standpoint that war is hell and has to be avoided at all costs, no matter who's right, who's wrong, who's justified, who's not justified, right? War is the greatest evil, is what he says, and I think he's right. And it's ironic that this kind of speech comes from Tulsi Gabbard, who just bragged on Twitter last week. You know, she got back from a jihadist hunting mission in Africa, right? So, yes. Granted, all those contradictions there, but I thought she laid this out pretty well. So let me just play a few minutes.
This proxy war that we're fighting against Russia right now could turn at any moment into a direct conflict between the United States, NATO, and Russia, a country that has more nuclear weapons than any other in the world. Now, anyone with a little bit of common sense knows that a Cold War can very quickly turn to a hot war. And that when you're waging a hot war against a nuclear-armed country, it's just a matter of time before it leads to the use of nuclear weapons at any moment. And here's the insanity of it all. We have talking heads on TV, we have politicians, we have very powerful people here in the United States and all around the world speaking with a straight face, well, you know, if we start World War III or when World War III starts, here's how we're going to fight and win. That if Putin decides to use tactical nuclear weapons, here's what we're going to do, as though such a war could ever be won. It cannot be won. World War III cannot be won. They're living in this archaic mindset of World War I and World War II and not facing the realities that we have today. There is no way to win a nuclear war. There is only one end, and that is a nuclear holocaust. So we're gathered here today because we know that it doesn't have to be this way. We know that there is a better way and that the task before us is urgent and necessary. We have people gathered here from all over the country, people who are gathered here from all ends of the political spectrum. And if we were to have a conversation, my guess is there may be other things we don't agree on. But the truth is that we could disagree about everything else. Everything else. But the one thing that we do agree on that brings us together here today is that we value life. We want to live. We want our loved ones to live and thrive. We want to be able to go out on a day like today and walk in the trees and hear the birds chirping with the sun shining down on our face. We understand that whatever our differences may be, that we must stand together as people who cherish peace, security, and freedom. We must set aside our differences, work together to fire those warmongering politicians from both political parties who serve their masters in the military-industrial complex instead of serving the people. Those warmongers who carelessly and thoughtlessly are sending us hurtling towards a nuclear holocaust that would destroy all life and the world as we know it. The only way we can stop them is when we stand together and lift our voices in unity, telling them no. We will not let you destroy us.
All right. So just two quick points I want to raise about that. Number one, I think there's the first point that's sort of hidden in plain sight, but it's a point that doesn't get made very often, which she's absolutely right. This is not like a World War I or World War II. You start exchanging nuclear weapons, that spells doom for all of humanity. There's no way to win it the old-fashioned way, which I feel like so many political thinkers, media people just don't seem to grasp. One of the key moments of the midterms that I pointed out was the Senate debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. And the question went to Tim Ryan. What if Vladimir Putin detonates a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine? And he gave the liberal cat stare that I talked about earlier. Well, we don't think he'll do that, and we hope he doesn't. But if he does, we'll respond with strength. Don't worry about it, And Vance, in my opinion, won the debate on that answer alone. He said, nobody knows what we're going to do if a nuclear bomb goes off, because you're talking about issues of existential scope once that happens. Yeah. Nobody knows what to do or how it's going to happen or how one action is going to provoke the reaction to that. And so that was one point. And then the other point is a version of the same point that has sort of been a common thread amongst those speakers that I just featured, which is the way you get eyes on you is to step outside of your comfort zone. You don't get eyes on you if you refuse to engage and show up. And, Tulsi is a contributor on Fox News, man. She is a high-profile figure, and she was one of the headliners of this event. You're not going to get someone of that prominence at a Code Pink rally. That doesn't mean the Code Pink rally is intrinsically worse or less virtuous than this one. All it means is that if you're doing politics, you have to be out there engaging with people. And so those are the two main points that I really loved in that bit. Who else? Open floor.
I mean, say what you want about Tulsi or anyone there, but the truth is the truth no matter who speaks it. And, so for me, it's kind of like, yeah, we can talk. And yeah, Tulsi, and I was a fan of Tulsi up until, some of her policies I didn't necessarily ride with. And I said, I can't support you. I can't endorse you in that way anymore. But, but that's what she was known for in 2020. She was the anti-war candidate, which people have and still do respect. Now, I think it's shown that she's on a varying degrees, depending, on the situation. And I think that could be a discussion for another time. But I think in this moment, she said the right thing to an audience that does support her, for better or for worse, in terms of the existential threat that it is if we continue to engage and poke the Russian bear, so to speak. And, and we may not be in a position where if we do end up in a nuclear war, we don't know the outcome of that, because that's never happened on our end. That's the only thing that I think in this country we have yet to experience. And I don't want to be a witness to that personally. So I think overall, given the audience, mostly, I would guess, maybe more right wing, I would argue, but they said the right things in this moment for the most part that I feel like that is the message that we have to kind of take away from me coming back to my home and having to think about now, okay, how do we build from here in terms of I think the right, as much as you want to say, and I'm talking about people on the right, regular people, I think have this idea. So how can we do the same thing on the left?
Yeah.
That is not, us kind of bashing the other or like each other, in terms of almost like this purity stance of you must agree with everything that, in terms of what, and it's always usually like, I think for me, being a person of color is usually always something that a person who is not of color is usually saying you have to agree with me on this thing, otherwise you don't. And there's various degrees like that. But I think ultimately we really need to have serious talks on the left on what does true solidarity look like, and what are we willing to sacrifice in terms of ideology and maybe some ideas that we have for whatever reason to ensure that we're able to get into the spaces that might be a little fearful or jarring to some of us, in order to connect with other people who, and I've had discussions with people on the right, and I think for me, it's learning how to take time to talk to them, especially given my lefty stances. But I think it's not impossible to kind of figure out, oh, you align more than we probably disagree. So I think it's a matter of making sure that we are in those avenues and not just kind of talking within our bubbles all the time. So that way, especially on the right, it can feel more safe, quote unquote, to be on the left, because we're at minimum willing to have those conversations with you, even if they may be uncomfortable. So I hope this can be the beginning of having those serious conversations, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that was very well said. Go ahead. Either of you guys want to go?
I just want to say I agree with you, and I hope that is the outcome. I mean, I really do. That's the whole, any criticism I have of the event is not on the messaging I heard from anybody.
Right.
We can all agree on that messaging. When I'm voicing criticism of the event, it's just to hope it was better. My opinion on the whole is this was a good event. That's where like this Fed shit that I hear rubs me wrong. But I mean, it's just one thing. But I mean, the point is, like, if you're not going to allow people on your own side to criticize an event, like you're replacing me basically. If you're not allowing my criticism, you're replacing me with someone far the fuck out on the right. So you have to allow criticism of these events as well, is my only point. But we do need to reach out to both sides. I mean, Medicare for all reached across all socioeconomic barriers. You've got events like the war, like healthcare, that everyone in America can see is holding them down. The fact that your job is tied to healthcare in this country is a fucking travesty. So everybody gets that stuff. Everybody pays their medical bills. Everybody sees this amplification of this war, the warmongering. They see that we're escalating things with Russia and its nuclear fucking war. So these are issues where we can't connect, and we should. But you should also allow criticism of these things. It's not necessarily trying to tear those things down. For a lot of people, even if you don't agree, they're trying to make these things better, which is not. Yeah. I'm not trying to criticize the whole event, or I'm Antifa now. But anyway.
Look, Pat is Pat the Burner on Twitter. Pat, you're one of the OGs. I mean, and this is why depraved loser. Which, by the way, I'm very touched if you actually changed your YouTube account name to Depraved Loser because the Vanguard called our audience depraved losers. If that's the case, thank you so much. That's very heartwarming. But please warn future guests. But like I said, Pat has what do you got? About 80,000 Twitter followers. You've been doing this for 8 years. You don't. I'm not worried about you triggering Pat or Lila. These guys are pros. These are champs. They've been at this long enough. I just think there are certain comments, don't go certain places because they are giving us their time. They're our guests for the evening. But
I don't care.
On that note,
I am a free speech purist. I really am. So bring it.
Pat said, look, about a week ago, I opined on Scott Ritter, and ultimately I came down on the side that people should not withdraw over Scott Ritter. And I don't think the Libertarian Party should have forced him out the way they did. According to Scott Ritter, they threatened to cancel the whole event because they held the permit. So they threatened to cancel the whole event unless he was booted. I don't think they should have done that. Yeah. But my speech on that got shit from both sides. There are people who were shocked and horrified that I wasn't harder on Scott Ritter, and then there were people who thought that I was a cuck for even acknowledging people's reservations. So I get how that goes. I know it's a no-win situation to try and walk a line. Even though I don't say anything to try and walk a line, I just say what I think, and sometimes it falls in a place where you could see both sides, right? Abiding 71, thank you for the 99 cents. I appreciate that. Is that all we got for this evening? I believe that is all we have for this evening. But yeah, overall, Rage Against the War Machine, they had about 1,000, 1,500 people show up. You would have liked to see a little bit more, but this was the most high profile event of its kind in recent memory. In fact, even in not so recent memory. I mean, I remember I was 16 when the Iraq War started, and I went to a handful of anti-war protests over the course of that year, 2003. Some were pretty small, like local town things, but then some were quite big. I remember going to the Manhattan one. It was huge. There were people as far as the eye could see. No eyes on it whatsoever. Now, it's largely a function of the fact that social media wasn't really around back then. YouTube existed, but not nearly in the form that it does now. But it also got absolutely zero mainstream media press. And this got next to zero, but you did make a bit of an impression there. That Tucker Carlson spot is significant. I think it is. Because I think what it does is it takes some of the... and, this might be offensive to certain hippies in the audience, and I'm not anti-hippie. My mom and dad were both hippies, right? I know lots of hippies, but anti-war politics has a sort of, 60s, flowery hippie ick on it to a lot of people. And I think it's important to broaden the appeal of an anti-war message beyond that. And I think that a docket like this, a speaker docket like this, with Tulsi and Ron Paul, and left-wing speakers too. Jill Stein, right, was on the list. Kucinich was on the list. Again, they had a couple of really left-wing people who dropped out, and I think that's unfortunate. But I think that's how you make an impact. I think that's how you get a conversation going, and I find it just hugely important that people listen to each other and engage with each other, especially since, to go back to what we started the show on, if you hinge your hopes on a better future on convincing Democratic primary voters to vote the right way, you're doomed. You're doomed. Yeah. This is not going to happen. This is not, and by this I mean we're not going to chart a future towards a better world trying to convince Pete Buttigieg-loving liberals to vote for, the Bernie candidate, whether it's Marianne or whoever it is. That's just not going to happen. So you have to just let go of that, right? The Bernie thing was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it's gone, right? And so that ship has sailed. So now you have to think outside the box, and that involves making yourself uncomfortable. And I think it's important. And so overall, I'm glad that the people showed up. I'm glad it got an audience online on YouTube. That's why we did this segment this evening. We're going to probably cover this again with some updated speaker clips when I have more time to look through it. But anyway, anybody have any closing thoughts about this before we sign off? I want to give our guest the last word.
I think just to sum up tonight, it's okay. I think as far as talking about what was good and talking about what can be better, I think to Pat's point, I think is valid, and I don't want to, I think we do need to have these discussions in order for us to be better, but also acknowledge the need, for the events like this and the actual organizing around this so that, again, we don't want this to be a one-off thing, we need more of these. but more importantly, we need an actual anti-war coalition, which we don't have, So I think really the question is moving forward is, what does that look like in this day and age? How do we get that started, especially on the ground, on the local level? And how do we magnify it to the point where we're not just seeing, again, one of these one-offs or like a sprinkling here and there, every once in a while. This should be happening every week, honestly, and I live in DC. There are a lot of rallies that happen every weekend, basically, so but stuff like this should not be the one end all. So as I said, I am willing to, and I think all of us are willing to talk about the hard things in terms of the criticism, like in this, and I do have quite a few of those, but let's use that as a way to build and be better and to be more inclusive of other things that are happening that we may not be aware of, but using our platforms in order to elevate those opportunities and take advantage of them and have our audience participate in taking advantage of them, because ultimately this is about them. Like, we want to empower our audiences to do this work as well.
Pat, Lila, anybody? You guys have anything to add?
Well, I just want to say that criticisms aside, I do appreciate the event. I think uniting with the right on issues when it makes sense, like anti-war, is a good thing. I think we should keep going down that avenue. I think, like Colin said, it's where we go from here that matters. I mean, this is just one rally, just like I was part of the Medicare for all rallies, and let's just see where they go. I mean, I was outside Nancy Pelosi's house yelling "fuck you" and giving a speech for M for all. And I want to say, like, no matter the criticisms that I bring to this rally, Kucinich, for example, was the first person that I saw publicly that was a major person call out the U.S. for bombing the Nord Stream pipeline. So, I mean, that alone could be a soundbite that can help the left, the anti-war movement. So something good came of it from just that we have the soundbite of Kucinich attacking our current president on bombing the Nord Stream pipeline. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead, Lila.
Yeah, well, so first of all, thank you for having us on. I appreciate
we appreciate our law enforcement here. Yeah, so we thank you guys for coming on.
Send all my Fed checks, please.
This is a Back to Blue show.
So appreciate that there was any anti-war rally, and that, some, as you said, big speakers did come. It's shocking that there was not as much media or, mainstream media attention, especially as we are, again, funneling billions of dollars to the worst people in the world. So I'm really appreciative that of the people who came and spoke and the people who went to support them. And yeah, I think we need to use it, as you said, Colin, as like, that's the first step. Let's keep building and moving forward. But in that, as we build and move forward, I think it's important that we can have conversations that are tough with each other, especially for those people who feel like they are on the left, when other people who are also on the left voice concerns. I just think it's important to hear them. You might not agree. I don't agree with everybody, but as we all saw on those Fox exit polls in 2020, most of the country, right and left, agree on most of the biggest issues that we are all championing. And so I think that is the most important takeaway, is that the divides are not as big as what the people in power try to make us think they are. So that is how I would like to move forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. And I'm sorry for adding something, because I know I said I was going to give you the last word, but I think something that all you guys touched on, I think we also have to just think about this as being a little bit more transcendent than necessarily helping the left. We're all left-wing people here. I've been a left-wing person since I understood what politics were. As a little kid, it never made sense to me that anyone should have to pay for medicine. Like, I didn't know what politics were at the time, but I'm thinking, why should you have to pay money for medicine, right? But I think this speaks to what Tulsi said there in a brief snippet, which is that we have to fire these politicians from both parties who are pro-war, right? I mean, if there's a deep red district where no Democrat's going to win, yeah, I'm sorry. I'd rather have the Matt Gaetz who wants to stop Ukraine funding than the neocon Bush-Cheney GOPer. And we talked about that earlier, about the differences, about how, a lot of the libs want to rehabilitate Bush. And I think we're all on the same page. No, Bush in every respect was way worse than Trump could ever aspire to be, just in terms of the body count. I mean, it's not even close. And so I think we have to think of it in that way too, as not necessarily just helping our political faction, but as a more transcendent project to just get these warmongers the hell out of there where we can and when we can, and put the party politics second. I think there's real merit to that. But anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. I know this was a bit of a long one and a bit of a rowdy one. It's always rowdy here, but thank you. Tusker says, great show, Feds. Well, thank you, Tusker. You can make your donation to the Newburgh, New York PBA next time you want to donate to the show.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Listen, I wasn't, I mean, I didn't have to warn Pat about, chats. Pat's been on Twitter for what? How long you been on Twitter now?
I mean, since I was this tall, I don't know.
No, but I've seen
long time, like 7, 8 years,
toe to toe with people who are.
I converted Peter Dow to Peter Lefty now. So
yeah, I remember those battles. Man. I followed you for a long time. I remember you in 2016, just having it out in these extended threads. So yeah, no, I knew you were game for it.
Anyway,
it's those biceps too. You look like a Fed. Those muscles. You gotta wear a long sleeve flannel hoodie like me to hide those. It's intimidating.
That's right, beer. I know. Yeah. To be cool. I'm going to slide in with my skateboard next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, fellow kids. Oh, jinx.
Get all your plugs in, everybody. Colin, go first, and then Pat and Lila.
Okay. You can find me and the rest of my INN family on indienews.network. I'm on Wednesday nights for INN News with Reed Breland. Wednesdays at 8 or 9 Eastern, depending on the timing. I'll be off this week, so don't look for me. And I believe you're going to be hosting Reef.
Yeah, Reef is coming on Thursday.
So definitely check out and support my brother. And Indy and Reef are going to be on at 10 for How Do We Miss That? So check them out as well. And also on Twitter, you can find us at Get Indie News as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, Reef is joining Thursday. I was obviously going to have you join with him and Russell. The plan is for Russell to be back on Thursday, but I'm booking guest hosts anyway because you never know what the Wi-Fi situation. He's going to be on the road. So that's the plan. Anyway, Lila and Pat, get your plugs in.
Yeah, we co-host.
Troll you on Twitter.
Yeah, I know. Come on, come watch the Feds drink.
Hate watch us, please. Hate watch us.
Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're a weekly show at Punch Up Pod, and this was really fun. Thanks for having us.
What Lila said. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for a lively discussion. As always, we will see you guys back here on Thursday night at 8 p.m. And I'll probably publish a few clips between now and then. So keep an eye out as always. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks to Colin, Pat, and Lila for joining. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you. Be safe. Be well.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Please clap.